our key thing is focusing on is making sure that we are reflecting an event and competition that inspires the next generation of builders, bricklayers to get involved with, people to come into the construction industry, making sure that what we're doing is sustainable in the environment. It's a huge focus at the moment.
Welcome everyone. I'm really excited for today's conversation. My guest today is Jack Dawson. He's the founder of SuperTrowel, the UK's largest bricklaying competition. So welcome, Jack. Great to have you.
No, well, thanks ever so much for having me on, Keith. It's great to be a part of the Growth Diary podcast.
Thank you very much. So just to go a bit into your background, because you've got a fascinating history, I wanted to sort of ask you a little bit about you as a person and sort of your journey through, if you don't mind.
No.
I understand you've got a bit of a background in bodybuilding.
Yeah. So away from the construction industry. Yeah, I grew up as a typical 90s kid. So grew up in the area of having kind of Arnold, Sylvester Stallone, Van Damme, all of those kind of influential people that were around, and also wrestling as well. So that kind of shaped my early kind of sort of adolescence going into teenage years, and wanted to do something that was very, very, very active, and found a passion in competitive bodybuilding on the natural side. So decided I wanted to be a drug-free athlete very, very early on. Competed at regional and got myself into sort of pretty decent shape. It's very, very demanding physically and mentally, but hopefully took a lot of the skills forward into wider aspects of my life.
Absolutely, that's awesome. So how did that then transcend into and segue into this next chapter? So you went from there to the construction industry. How did that take shape?
I think, yeah, I mean, as I say, it's obviously that's kind of completely separate, but always having a work ethic. I worked with my dad very early on. I've got, I said to you before, and I've said on another podcast, my earliest memory of working with my dad was I was sort of 4 years old working with him on a Saturday, and he used to take me along as his labourer, and that continued all the way through primary and secondary school. Obviously, health and safety was slightly different back then. He was able to do that on smaller jobs. And then, working half terms, Easter, summer holidays with him, because it was a better way to get a bit of pocket money rather than be doing a paper round. And during that time, I then really, decided that construction was something for me, and specifically bricklaying, because he was a bricklayer. This was going to be something that I wanted to pursue. Then went to, after school, it seems very stereotypical for a lot of people in the industry. Didn't really do too great in kind of exams, come out with a pass in English, but nothing in maths to write home about. And then went on to the further education college, funny enough, that I work at now. I got myself an apprenticeship, and then landed up in a teaching role after a friend of mine said that there's a job going at the college teaching adults in the evenings. So I got myself a job there, and then that's fast forward 20 years, here I am sitting here, and it's my full-time occupation for myself.
Amazing. I love that.
Yeah.
And so, you've taken that as a concept, that, something very practical, being bricklaying, into this unique spectator event. How did that all come about in the first place?
So I held back in 2022, not long after we kind of come out of the COVID-19 lockdown, I was approached by the Guild of Bricklayers, and I'd been aware of the Guild of Bricklayers from my teaching years, that they wanted to hold a regional competition, at the college that I work at, which is Hertfordshire Regional College. They approached me saying, look, we need a new venue for the London Regional Heat. Would you be open to having it at your college? So I approached some of my colleagues, some of the senior colleagues at the college, and said, look, this is what I want to do. And I had fantastic support from some real key individuals, one of them being Katrina Doherty, who works as the vice principal at Hertfordshire Regional College, and said, I want to do this. And she gave me a amount of support, and we said, yeah, let's do it. And I was always very conscious of holding competitions, because I'd taken a learner to a competition a long, long time before that. I think it was around sort of 2015, and got him to compete. And it was at a London college, and it was the college that hosted it. The learners won outright at that college, and I was always very cautious of that, thinking, look, this needs to be transparent in this. So do I really want to be hosting something that it could look like that if my learners compete, where are they going to play? So, there's always that feeling of, my learner's going to do well. You want to make sure that everything's, rightly aligned if you're hosting a competition. And I did a host of the first London Guild competition in 2022. Lo and behold, my learners were very, very fortunate to place first in the juniors and senior categories, which I was thrilled about. So they then approached me again and said, look, it's brilliant. We'd like you to consider hosting it again the following year in 2023, which I did. And that was when my now business partners came along. So when I hosted those competitions, I invited a lot of the subcontractor partners and obviously employers that we work with closely that support apprenticeships, and a lot of the manufacturers along to the competitions. And two of those manufacturers and sort of supporting affiliates were Joe Short, who owns Brick Jackets, and Ashley Francis, who started what's called the Bricklayers Social Club during lockdown as a way for bricklayers to have that social element when everyone kind of went into lockdown, and had lost that social side of what we do in the construction industry. So we had started having this conversation around the competition that's based over in America, which is called the Spec Mix 500. We were all aware of it, and then Ash said to me, look, how do you feel about hosting a UK version here at the college? I said, absolutely, let's get the plans in, get the wheels turning on this. And 12 weeks later, we had over 500 people there. We'd end up with 7 bricklayers from across the UK. It was just, it was an incredible atmosphere. And then fast forward 2 years, and we're, as you say, we've hopefully cemented ourselves, if you pardon the pun, as the UK's biggest bricklaying competition and events. We're really thrilled about it.
Amazing. And so, if you're a newbie, completely new to it, could you describe SuperTrowel and what the event is and who's it for and who can enter?
Yeah, of course. So it's open to any fully qualified bricklayer. So any bricklayer that has completed their MVQ and holds a blue card status, if you want, in CSCS card, or that they've been a lifelong served bricklayer and recognised in industry as being a fully qualified bricklayer. We hold it at regional level, so next year we're having 7 regionals across the UK. In 2023, we only did the one competition, which has now grown to regional events where we hold it again at colleges that we're thrilled to say that we work with some real great colleges. Next year, the first one we got, which they start in early Feb, we've got Leeds City College. We're then flying over to Newry College in Northern Ireland. We're then to hold regional heat there. We then got one in Wales, one in Cornwall, one bag of half a regional college, and then one down in central London. And also we're hoping to fulfil one in Scotland for next year as well. And at each regional heat, it's open to 10 bricklayers that put their names forward to say, yeah, I'd like to compete. And the main, it's now developed into what we call the Pro Series, is an hour-long bricklaying race to lay as many bricks as you can within the hour. The parameters of it is it's a 9-metre long 1-brick wall, so what we traditionally call a garden wall, in stretcher bond, and they can't use any aids. They have to build corners. They work as part of a team, so there's a bricklayer and their labourer, or in the industry we call them a hod carrier. And as I say, within that hour, their job is to lay as many bricks as they can. And it's the whole thing. I think taking the competitive element, as you've said, and that was just purely organic of a competitive element. It was always the age-old thing of how many bricks can you get on your shoulder, how many bricks can you lay in a day, and this has turned into how many bricks can you lay in an hour. And that's where it's gone, Keith. And it's just, as I say, the atmosphere, even at regional levels, is so exciting.
You make me feel like I want to come along and watch it myself.
Please, yeah, absolutely. I'm sure we'll welcome you to.
Yeah, I'd love to see it. So, you're obviously scaling up. I mean, you've got so many venues, so many events going on. And what would you say is the hardest part? Is it judging, health and safety, getting competitors to turn up, marketing, sponsorship? What's been the hardest bit?
I think as it started to grow, he's recognised that what started as a competition that's purely held for a social aspect, at a small kind of level. I say small, but please, with 500 people at a college, that certainly isn't small by any means, but it was very much a smaller network and has now grown into a national event. It's been the growth that's happened so quickly is at times it's been quite overwhelming and thinking, right, we need to slow down and think about what are our key things that we want to focus. Our key thing is focusing on is making sure that we are reflecting an event and competition that inspires the next generation of builders, bricklayers to get involved with, people to come into the construction industry, making sure that what we're doing is sustainable in the environment. It's a huge focus at the moment on sustainability within construction. We have a huge drive on mental well-being, so raising the awareness around sort of mental well-being within construction. Organically, as part of that, is also thinking about our own mental well-being as well. There still is only the three of us that run this company. We have a fantastic videographer called Josh, but apart from that, it's literally is just the three of us as directors that run everything from set-up days to the regional events. We have a fantastic team of judges that volunteer solely to make sure the regionals and the final happen. But when it comes to the marketing that's involved, the security, the whole organisation is just us three. So it is demanding. We are very, very fortunate. We have a huge support network in our families that there's a debt that we could never repay. But I think as it's starting to get bigger, they're sort of the key drivers behind what we do.
Yeah, absolutely. So how are
Yeah.
you reaching out to these contractors to get them interested in the events?
So in the early days, it was relying kind of a lot on social media and making sure that we was using word of mouth. In an industry where you never thought there would be influencers that work in construction, it now seems to be rife that there are so many great people out there that are really passionate and celebrate what they do, and kind of saying to those people, making them aware of what the event is and inviting them to come along, and then just that organic kind of marketing that happens, which seems to be the word of mouth of, have you heard about SuperTrowel? You might want to come along to it, have a look at this video, have a look at that on social media. And that certainly has been our key sort of organic marketing, really. We've, apart from the, you do kind of the normal stuff on social media, the paid ads and stuff like that for targeting audiences, but those are all kind of external to us, as long as you've got great content as well. As I say, aligning ourselves with a fantastic marketing videographer, Josh Methven. He's been key to making sure we've got very, very unique content, we've been told, in our industry that really makes the event pop. In that, and I always go back to, because I mentioned it at the start, you almost want it to be like that kind of wrestling WWE promos that kind of take off, and it really does bring that competitive element to it.
Yeah, absolutely. Behind the scenes, you're selling tickets, collecting competitor applications, keeping sponsors happy, pushing content, all this. There's a lot of moving parts there. So what feels like sort of too manual, and what would you kind of like to start to automate, would you feel, in the coming months?
I think there's always going to be the three of us of driving it and having those conversations that sponsors, exhibitors feel like they have that familiarity of dealing with just us three. There's not, to be honest with you, Keith, there's not much you can automate in that as a business for the type of event that it is. You're constantly getting feedback from attendees. We really do pride ourselves on doing surveys to get that feedback from attendees. What does that look like? Feedback from exhibitors to make sure we're improving their experience and everyone's experience of being at the event. We always said we wanted to have an event that it didn't matter if you was, that, like we say, that sort of 16-year-old apprentice right the way up to you worked in the industry your whole life, to make sure that you had a great day. And I think what that's now developing into is we want to make sure that even younger than those apprentices, that we're engaging with an audience that, when they're at secondary school, they say, definitely, I want to get into this industry because I love it. So there's some real key things that we're really excited about for next year already.
Amazing. So, if you were to say, right, okay, I've got a magic wand and I can, wave it at the business, what area would you want to try to improve in some way, just to make something magic happen, and go, do you know what, if I could sort that one thing out, that would be amazing, and then I can think straight, kind of thing.
I think giving, obviously, it's the most precious commodity is having more time. But I think if there was that magic wand to turn around and go, okay, all three of us could work on it full time, that would be the ultimate, to be able to go, right, we can just solely focus on this. Because trying to squeeze everything in, as I mentioned to you before, on just a phone call that we had, I've dropped down to 4 days a week at the college, so that's freed me up on a Friday to be able to do things like this and promote the event, but also be able to solely focus on having those conversations with key individuals and make sure everything's aligned. And then you're picking up at weekends and chasing your tail at weekends. And it's just, I think if there was to be able to have that growth, that we could put ourselves fully onto the company as a resource, that'd be fantastic. I think that's probably the biggest thing as a magic wand moment.
Yeah, nice.
Yeah.
And so, what's the big vision, the end goal? Where would you like to really see it to in its prime? What does that look like as a landscape?
The end goal would be that we are in a position where we're known as sort of the UK's biggest construction event in Hull, in terms of using that competitive model that we've got and then exploring and see where that goes in other trade aspects, to then look at other trade disciplines and bring that together, and also celebrate the industry in everything that we do, to engage, as I said, with even younger generations, have families come along to it, have construction, have bricklaying as a whole, as a career aspirational, not just for those, there's that 4-year-old kid that goes to work with dad, but the parents as well and grandparents, to go, do you know what? Construction is not just as it was seen, as it has always kind of been seen as, the plan B, but no, this is plan A. And this is why it could be plan A, because you could be in a position where you're in a position and you love what you do when you go to work. That would be, for us, that is the primary goal.
Nice. And then, so if you're an aspiring competitor in your industry, where can they go to find out more information and then potentially sign up to your event?
Yeah, you can sign up on the website. Obviously, we advertise on socials. We're just about to do another bit of a small drive. To be fair, Keith, we're nearly full. We've got, already we've got a lot of our applications 2026. What will be coming out soon is the application process for our SuperTrowel juniors as well. So the juniors compete in the regional heat. The last 2 years we've done them with the learners within the college, but next year we're going to be looking at surrounding colleges within that wider area, that they can apply to compete at that regional college, similar to what I mentioned before with that sort of guild of bricklayers and skill build model. They can apply through the website, put down kind of where they want to compete, as long as it works geographically, and then and the applications start from there, and then you kind of put your trowel on the line and have a go.
I presume you're still open to more exhibitors and sponsors for the events as well?
Yeah, I mean, this year we had just over 100 exhibitors. We have some great sponsorship models available to maximise brand awareness for brands. We always say to people, although it's an event that happens kind of once a year, our sponsorship and exhibiting opportunities allow for exposure all the way through the year. So we don't just advertise just at the event. These are ongoing sort of media campaigns that we do with sponsors to make sure they're getting maximum return of investment, and doing our due diligence behind making sure people are spending their marketing budgets. We want to make sure that we're looking after that so that they get the return of investment from it.
Amazing. Well, Jack, honestly, thanks so much for sharing all that info and how you're building this. It's generally really cool to see someone who's clearly passionate and building something truly unique. So I appreciate your time today.
No, I appreciate you. Thanks for having me. And I think it's brilliant that you're the podcast that you're doing, and it's listen to a couple of it. I think it's brilliant. So thanks ever so much for having me on.
I appreciate that. Thank you. Thanks again.